Thank you, good evening. Should I be pausing in between for translation of my comments, or how do you want to handle that?
So only people wish to provide comments in Spanish,
Okay, then I won't stop every sentence.
unless you want to be translated or interpreted, sorry.
So,
Can you please ask if there's any request for interpretation before I begin?
¿hay alguna persona presente que necesita el servicio de un intérprete? Levante la mano. No es.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. My name is Jennifer Wood. I'm an attorney and I'm employed at the Rhode Island Center for Justice, which is a nonprofit public interest law firm. And we represent the George Wiley Center, which is an intervener in dockets 4770 and 4780, now the consolidated docket. And I want to offer some public comment this evening to explain the position of the George Wiley Center in the consolidated docket as we have represented it in the proceeding going forward. The settlement is a representation of that which a settlement always is, which is a compromise. The settlement does not represent the position that the company requested in their initial filing, nor does it represent the initial positions taken by the Division of Public Utilities in its responses. The settlement does not represent any of the positions taken by any of the interveners, including the George Wiley Center and the Center for Justice on their behalf, but rather it has developed over the last several months as a complex set of compromises in a number of domains. And on balance, it has become the position of interveners, including ourselves, that this is a positive outcome and a step towards greater access to sustainable, affordable utility service for low-income Rhode Islanders. So why do we support the consolidated settlement agreement? Really, there are three areas of focus that we have mentioned in all of the filings that have been made in the dockets on behalf of the George Wiley Center. First of all, the overall constraint of upward revenue requirements. Because in fact, somewhat counterintuitively, we don't only focus on the impact on the bill of low-income eligible ratepayers, but rather on the costs of the system as a whole. So we've been very attentive to the overall analysis of any revenue requirements that would cause any inflationary increases in the cost of energy overall in the state of Rhode Island. Because although there may be temporary or even sustained ways to buffer those increases for low-income consumers, ultimately, if the cost of the system as a whole goes up, that has the potential to have a negative impact on low-income consumers. So we're very aware of the fact that the original revenue requests from the company were significantly in excess of the settlement amount. And the reduction in revenue requests in the settlement are greater than simply the impact of the tax effect of the new tax legislation. So this is a reduction in overall revenue requirements beyond the impact of the tax reduction. So from a kind of revenue hawk perspective, if you will, we see that as a positive development from the filing of the case to the arrival at a settlement. Secondly, we really do want to focus in on the effect on low-income consumers and the direct effect in the settlement. As has already been discussed, the settlement does not reflect the George Wiley Center position entering into the docket as an intervener. That remains extremely clear. The Center and the Center for Justice on behalf of the Wiley Center continues to advocate for a low-income rate that is based on a percentage of income and ability to pay. That is the goal and the destination. There is a recognition, however, that the settlement contains a tiered low-income rate that represents a significant increase in the low-income discount and is the first step towards a return to an income-sensitive tiered rate. Because based on the testimony of the division's expert, Mr. Colton, the rate that is included in the settlement agreement is one that provides a 25% discount, which is a significant increase above the proposed 15% discount that was originally proposed, and a 5% adder for low-income consumers who are demonstrated to be in certain programs for low-income consumers that would render them eligible for an additional discount, for a total discount of 30%. And so this is a movement forward with a basic low-income discount, an additional discount for those who have evidence of significant additional financial need, and is the first step with a two-tier rate towards what we are continuing to advocate for, which is a multi-tiered income-sensitive rate that is capped based on a percentage of income. So again, certainly not the desired outcome for the Wiley Center or us on their behalf as an intervener, but a significant step in the right direction towards that goal. In fact, the impact on the bill, as I know the commissioners are aware, of an income-eligible low-income consumer will be significantly reduced in real terms. 16% reduction for the electric consumer, for an average savings for the average low-income consumer of in the neighborhood of $175 per year, and a 22% decrease in real terms for that average consumer from the current rate, with a savings of approximately $260 per year. We feel these are material savings that will have a significant positive impact while not reaching our ultimate goal of having the percentage of income plan. These are significant savings that we think are important to be included in the settlement. They have been included in the settlement and form a large basis for our support for the settlement. Finally, we also support the settlement because it takes a structurally different approach. And everyone is well aware that that is one of the kind of critical game changers in terms of how this settlement comes forward, with a multi-year analysis, looking at a number of different power system transformation issues that have been brought forward in the now consolidated docket. And particularly, as we've sat through many complicated discussions among the stakeholders, we've seen the position of the company, the position of the division, and the position of the stakeholders move and be informed by this broader, more robust stakeholder discussion than we believe would have been possible in the presentation of evidence in an adversarial proceeding. Because there's been a very nuanced discussion among the stakeholders and the parties, among the interveners and the parties in chief, and we've seen material changes during those discussions that were important to the interests of various interveners, including to our direct interest on behalf of the Wiley Center for Low-Income Consumers. So for example, in the introduction of performance measures into this new power sector transformation aspect of the docket, most of the performance measures seem, on first blush, not to be particularly relevant to the direct interests of the low-income consumer. But through the dialogue as part of the settlement process, we were able to advocate for the inclusion of 3 measures on which data will begin to be collected through the settlement process that are directly relevant to the experience and needs of low-income consumers. Those 3 performance measures, which will be in the data collection and modeling phase in this round, in this settlement, but which then will become potentially mature for inclusion as performance measures with actual economic consequences in future rate-setting cases, include looking at not just the accessibility of charging stations for electric vehicles in low-income areas, because none of us really have a crystal ball to know whether that's going to become a meaningful issue and whether adoption of electric vehicles is a direction that is going to be helpful to the low-income consumer. But one thing we would like to know is if there are going to be a requirement as part of investments that are made by the company in having electric vehicle charging stations, are they being used? What is that utilization? Collect the data now, learn from it, and see whether that is a meaningful investment to be made in the future. So that was one of the areas in which we advocated that if you're going to be collecting data about a variety of performance measures, let's make sure that some of those are relevant to low-income consumers. The other two for which we advocated and which were also included are much more directly relevant to the sustainable, affordable access to energy. And those are beginning to, for the first time ever in a systematic way, collect evidence about whether the company is avoiding and reducing terminations of low-income consumers by offering enrollment in the arrearage management plan. And at what rate are individuals who are facing potential termination being offered and enrolled in arrearage management? We think this is a critically important measure that beginning to systematically collect data on that question will assist the commissioners, the division, the company, and certainly advocates for low-income consumers to begin to track whether or not there are additional steps that need to be taken and additional requirements that need to be placed on the company to expand enrollment in the arrearage management plan and to reduce terminations for low-income consumers. Finally, we also advocated for, and you find included in the settlement, the collection of data for a performance measure that looks at enrollment of low-income consumers in the low-income discount. We know that low-income discount, whether in its current form or in the enhanced form that you find in the settlement, is not universal for those who are eligible. There are a significant number of Rhode Islanders who would be eligible for the low-income discount who do not currently access that discount. And by beginning to gather the evidence about how big that gap is, we believe that in future it would be appropriate to create a performance measure which incentivizes the company to ensure that every Rhode Islander who is eligible for the low-income discount is enrolled in that discount and is gaining the benefit both of the basic discount and the additive 5% deeper discount if they're eligible. So for all of those reasons, again, you will hear, I'm sure, that this settlement is not a perfect solution. And in fact, it would require significant and additional structural amendments to the manner in which low-income consumers access energy in this state for us to say that this was a perfect solution. But it is a compromise solution that contains, we think, many elements that are favorable for low-income consumers, and therefore on balance and on behalf of the center, we do support the settlement in its totality. Thank you very much.